Hello everyone and welcome to News Coolum. So this is a special video. This is sort of just my take and I'll do these from time to time. But I just finished watching the Tesla Semi unveiling, and as always it's a wonderful show, but I really like to focus more on the meat of what was presented and do a little bit deeper analysis because sometimes Tesla, I won't say they mask the numbers, but they present what they want to show, and I like to do a little bit deeper thought process and go into what the implications might be, what it means for the industry, what they might not be talking about, or what they might be implying. So let's just dive right into it. The Semi is something that I've supported for a very long time, and I think we need a lot more electric semis on the road. I think we just need electric semis on the road. I've been around them enough to know just how dirty and inefficient and hard to drive and hard to maintain they are, and having an electrified version of them, just what I know going from internal combustion engine passenger cars to electric passenger cars, the differences if translated to semis make a huge difference. It is truly revolutionary, and if Tesla wanted to make the biggest impact as soon as they possibly could, they should have focused on the Semi first, but they would have never gained enough momentum and enough knowledge to actually build it the way they did. Now that being said, in terms of what they unveiled that actually surprised me, there actually wasn't a whole lot. The big thing is, I knew that it would have at least a minimum of 300 miles of range. And the reason I said that was I figured at the very least what they would be doing is they would be using the Semi to transport batteries from their Sparks Gigafactory to their Fremont assembly plant. About 300 miles. It makes sense to be able to transport those. And then also, most of their car deliveries are still within California, and so 300 miles from Fremont gets you pretty much anywhere in California where the average Tesla purchase is going to occur. Now, yeah, you'd need to extend a little farther to get down to the likes of San Diego, but it's really not that much of a stretch, especially just one of, well, we'll get to it later, with the mega chargers. That would easily make that route possible with a 300-mile Semi. Now, what they announced was actually a 500-mile Semi. And again, that's perfectly within reason, and people should have seen that coming, right? You have Daimler releasing their electric Semi and talking about how far it can go. But, none of these other alternatives, I think, maybe they didn't plan for Tesla to be able to say, we're actually just going to go the full 500. And then the other, and so that was kind of a surprise. I figured a minimum of 300 and they might start with that. But Tesla promises big, so 500 is what we got. And the other thing is, and this is a smaller thing that surprised me, I sort of anticipated that they'd be able to get the coefficient of drag, the CD, of the Semi down to, I was figuring 0.4 to 0.45, which is a huge improvement when you really think about it. Some of the most aerodynamic Semis being sold right now have a CD of about 0.6 to 0.65. So just to get to 0.4 would have been a huge achievement. Now they claim to have gotten to 0.36. which is again even more of an improvement, which also accounts for probably why they can get the full 500 miles out of the battery. Now that 0.36, I think what pushed it over the edge that I didn't think about that surprised me is their variable cowls that match the Semi to the trailer. By doing that, you do actually reduce a huge sort of dead area in the aerodynamics. Pretty much everything else I had accounted for. The front without any large openings or gaping holes, the completely flat underbelly, all of that I had sort of anticipated, but it's that additional aspect of the cowl that can match the trailer that cuts down on the aerodynamics even more. So that was kind of the little surprise. And one thing I'll give a kudos to to Elon for, and it's really the people that he brought in to work on the truck. But they did account for the little details, and one of them is something that a lot of people just wanted to ignore, is, oh, well, we have diesel semis that can go 1,500 miles on a refueling. Yeah, they can, but by law the driver cannot. And so really you're limited to about 5 hours of driving before you are required by law to stop for 30 minutes. Now this is a federal law. Sure, you can say, oh, well, I ignored it, but truck drivers, this is their livelihood. They don't get that cop-out that some of the road warriors of, oh, I want to drive 1,500 miles in a single day without stopping. They don't have that option. By law, they have to stop. And so a semi almost makes more, an electric semi almost makes more sense for them, because they only have to drive about 5 hours before they need to stop for a break. Then they can drive a few more hours, and then they have to stop for the day. So it makes perfect sense, and I'm glad he sort of checked that off. The other thing besides driver brakes is truck brakes. Coming down the Grapevine, which is a huge, 6 to 8% grade, you smell burning clutches, burning brakes. The fact that an electric semi can regenerate that power back into the battery is why they are superior. Pure and simple, you get energy that you put in going up the hill, back going down. And also, I will say, there is nothing more aggravating than following a semi that decided it wanted to pass another semi going up a grade, and all it's doing is 35 to 40 miles an hour. I'm glad they can do 65 miles an hour uphill. And then, and I wanted to focus actually more on the battery itself. To achieve what they're talking about, you'd need about a 500 kilowatt hour usable battery capacity, which is cool, and that's about what I anticipated. It also means that the truck is not going to really weigh that much more than a conventional diesel truck, because you take all of those internal combustion components out, you're talking about thousands of pounds for the transmissions, thousands of pounds for the engine. Right now you replace it with a few light electric motors and a battery pack, and you pretty much break even. So a 500 kilowatt hour battery pack is well within reason. And the other number they quoted, 400 miles in 30 minutes. That means that they were planning to charge these at 800 kilowatts. So that's pretty cool as well. So whether they're going to do like a battery pack split, so they maintain the normal amperage and they get to virtually double it by putting, about 400 volts here and 400 volts there, and charge modules of the battery pack separately, who knows, but it should be around an 800 kilowatt charge rate. So that's pretty cool as well. Again, it also means they're going to have to implement, dedicated mega chargers for this, but that's one area where Tesla has been doing well, and they definitely have a leg up against all of the competition that's trying to sell electric semis. Next, I can't stand it. I know I planned it. I'm going to have to set the record straight on this Watergate. Elon Musk, as is his nature, as is Tesla's nature, there was one big surprise, which I should have seen coming. They not only unveiled the Semi, they also unveiled the Roadster. Now, the Roadster, by Elon's admission, is a big slap in the face of gasoline supercars. So the big numbers that you're going to see floating around now is the 1.9 second 0 to 60 time and the 4.2 second 0 to 100 time. They're basically making a supercar, and they're pricing it like a supercar, $250,000. That buys a lot of batteries. Apparently it buys 3 motors as well. Now this car, though, is it's interesting in that, yeah, it's completely gratuitous, and for that nature, I almost feel like if you buy it, you should be forced to take delivery with a completely plaid upholstered interior. That's right, if you're going to go plaid, you better be in plaid. Now, other than that, though, again, much like the Semi, I don't want to focus on the top level numbers of, oh, it's going to be this fast and it's going to do this much. but more, what does it mean, right? So one of the big things is they quoted the over 600 miles of range and the 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. One thing immediately jumped out to me. That means this car only gets 3 miles to the kilowatt hour. That's pretty bad. So that is not ideal. It's cool that it can go 300 miles, 600 miles in a charge, but 3 miles per kilowatt hour is not highly efficient. Now, what it implies to me is they might actually be taking a modification of the Model S, Model X powertrain and using it for the Roadster. And the reason I say that is, while permanent magnet motors are much more efficient than the induction motors that you see in the Model S and the Model X, the power to weight ratio isn't the same, which is also why you see the Model S and the Model X with far more power than the Model 3 that's coming out with the permanent magnet AC motors. So they're probably going to go that direction, which explains the energy to weight ratio, the poor efficiency. It also means that, those are cheaper to build, so good for them. The other aspect of it, though, is it's a fairly compact car, and they're claiming to get those 200 kilowatt hours of batteries into that car. Well, they're not going to be able to use the battery technology that they're currently using in the Model S, X, or even the Model 3. The energy density just isn't there. Now, part of it is the format of the battery itself. When you have cylindrical cells, stacking them together, you have a huge amount of dead space within that battery. So it's going to take up a larger footprint for the same amount of energy. So if they're actually fitting 200 kilowatt hours into the Roadster, my guess is they're going to need to be changing both the chemistry and the format. So they might be moving to that prismatic pouch cell style as opposed to the cylindrical style, which also could mean why they're going, they're pushing this out until 2020. Now, the other aspect of that is, though, they could also be implementing some sort of new technology, possibly solid state. So they might have been making a bit of a jab at Fisker, who recently announced their solid state batteries that will increase energy density by about 2.5 times. So that's that would mean that in the same footprint as a 150 or 100 kilowatt hour battery pack that they currently have in their Model S or Model X, you could now fit 250 kilowatt hours. So it could also be a transition over to solid state, and like I said, a bit of a jab at Fisker maybe, who recently patented that. Another possibility is they aren't going full solid state, but Tesla does have a very strong partnership with Samsung. And Samsung, if you watch the progression of like the i3, and they have this cryptic battery capacity as they give it, but it's based on the cell level where they're talking about the amp hours. But you notice in the same, again, footprint of the battery, the same size battery for the i3, they've gone from like 60 to 94 amp hours recently. If Samsung, in partnership with Tesla, is able to increase their energy density again, say they could get the equivalent of what they would call 120 amp hour in the i3 battery pack, well, now you have a prismatic cell that's more compact, about 10, 15, 20% more density per volume than a Tesla battery pack with the cylindrical cells. But then on top of it, now they've increased the energy density based on the chemistry of the battery itself. It is possible that within that footprint they could fit a 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. Time will tell. For me, it's more important what that implies for other vehicles. Does that now mean that we will see a plethora of 400 to 500 mile electric vehicles that are running on the more efficient permanent magnet AC motors, which will alleviate pressure on the fast charging grid and drop the price of everyday electric vehicles that can replace internal combustion vehicles, and their owners really don't even need to think about it anymore. They'll just have a car that when they wake up they can do all the driving they need to do. If they go on a trip, most of their charging will be overnight at a destination. I think that has some very positive implications moving forward. So implemented in a $250,000 supercar first, but hopefully that technology, sort of trickles down to more consumer level products. And on that note, just throwing this out there, that seems like a pretty killer deal if you only have to have 50 Tesla referrals. $250,000 car versus 50 Tesla. You could do a timeshare. I'm just saying, we could each get it for about a week, a year. That's not so bad. Wait, I need a Tesla referral code. Anyway, thank you guys for listening. As always, I look forward to hearing your comments and your feedback, trying to improve every day, and keep the discussion civil, and I look forward to next time.